My name is Margaret, and I'm 73 years old. If you're reading my story now, it's not because I seek sympathy, but because everything changed one evening. A simple dinner, a table, and a lie. For weeks, my son Adam had promised me a quiet family dinner. "Mom, we're having a little dinner at the house on Saturday. Come over. The kids will be there, and Sarah's making her famous apple pie." I had marked the date in my calendar, the one Sarah always calls stylish, but not too much. I even stopped at the bakery to buy a cake they liked. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for this special time together. But on the evening of that Saturday, at 5:32 p.m., my phone rang. It was Adam. His voice was dry, a bit embarrassed. "Listen, Mom, we're going to have to cancel for tonight. Sarah's exhausted, and the kids are sick. We're just going to have noodles in front of the TV. We'll reschedule, okay?" A feeling of disappointment hit me. "Oh, okay, sure, rest up." But something didn't feel right. His tone sounded off, and I couldn't understand why Sarah would be behind him if she was so tired. I paused for a moment, holding the phone to my ear. Something inside me said, "No, not this time." I sat down on the edge of my bed, the cake still warm in its bag. After a few moments, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. I needed to go, even if it meant showing up uninvited. At 6:15 p.m., I grabbed my coat, took the cake, and walked out the door. Adam and Sarah lived just 10 minutes from me in a newer neighborhood on the outskirts of town. I had visited them often in the past, but lately my visits had become fewer and fewer. Always an excuse, always a maybe next weekend. As I arrived at their house, I saw lights glowing behind the curtains, shadows moving, and most importantly, I heard the laughter of children playing. I heard Adam's voice. "All right, everyone to the table." I froze on the sidewalk, my hand trembling on the paper bag holding the cake. What was going on? I rang the doorbell. First there was nothing, then the door creaked open. Sarah appeared in the doorway, surprised. "Oh, Margaret, you're here," she said. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I brought a cake. I thought I'd stay for just a few minutes." Sarah looked at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, she opened the door a little wider. As I stepped inside, I saw the table set with 6 plates, a white tablecloth. "It's a dinner with friends, and we wanted to avoid any tension," he explained, his voice tense. I felt my legs weaken, and something inside me snapped. "Tension? What tension? What was going on here?" "Sarah thinks you always have something to say, and then you judge," he added, looking away. I stayed silent, clutching the cake in my arms like a child clinging to a comfort item. "I just wanted to share a meal," I said softly, not impose. Adam sighed deeply. "It's better this way," he muttered, and then he literally shut the door on me. I stood outside for a few seconds, my heart pounding, listening to the sounds of laughter from inside. I heard Sarah ask, "Who was that?" and Adam answer, "No one, no one." That word hit me like a blow to the chest. No one. I turned away, still holding the cake, but everything inside me felt cold. As I walked back to my car, every step felt heavier. I thought about everything I had done for them over the years, the sleepless nights, the money I had saved, the sacrifices I had made, and all of it amounted to this single word echoing in my mind: no one. I whispered to myself, "Not this time, Margaret. You've been a mother, you've given everything. Now it's time to take back what's been stolen from you." That night, when I returned to my house, I set the still warm cake down on the kitchen counter, the bag now crumpled. I placed my keys on the entry table and stood there, frozen. It felt like I didn't have a place in the house anymore, or in their lives. I didn't even take off my coat.
I sat in the dark listening to the silence, the emptiness that had been growing in me for years, the emptiness I had refused to confront because no one wants to believe that their own children can become the architects of their isolation. But that night they ate without me. They laughed without me. They even denied my existence in front of their guests. And my son, the one I had raised, the one I had cared for alone after his father left, had called me no one. That word haunted me. But that was when I realized, not anymore. The next day I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, the sting of rejection still fresh. I went through the motions of my usual routine, but my mind kept drifting back to the previous evening, the laughter, the table set for a family meal, and the way Adam had dismissed me, as if I no longer mattered. But more than that, the word no one kept echoing in my mind. No one. It hurt more than anything he had ever said to me. By the time the evening rolled around, I had made a decision. I was done being passive. I wasn't going to wait for Adam or Sarah to come around. They had made their choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I wasn't going to beg for their love. Instead, I would focus on myself, reclaim my dignity, my worth. The next few days were difficult. I didn't hear from them. Not a call, not a text, not even a simple, "How are you, Mom?" It was as if I didn't exist.
And the silence, while painful, was oddly liberating. For the first time in a long time, I felt free from the weight of trying to be the mother they expected me to be, the one who would always put them first, no matter how they treated me. I spent hours reflecting on my life, going through old photos of Adam when he was a little boy, the days I had spent caring for him, supporting him. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, how I had helped them buy their house, how I had even paid for their wedding, all in the name of family. Yet all I got in return was nothing. I began to realize how much of my energy had gone into them, how much I had given, expecting something in return that I never received. Then I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called my notary. "I want to change my will," I told him, my voice steady but firm. "I want to make sure that everything I leave behind goes to people who deserve it, not those who take me for granted." He was surprised, but he didn't question me. He understood the gravity of what I was asking. "Do you want to remove anyone?" he asked. "No," I replied. "I just want to think about who truly deserves to be a part of it." As the days passed, I felt more and more at peace with my decision. I had stopped calling Adam, stopped sending messages to Sarah, and I didn't ask to see my grandchildren. I could feel the distance growing between us, but this time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like liberation. A week later, my neighbor Beatrice came by. She's 78, a widow, but full of life. The kind of woman who always knows what to say. She looked at me with a sharp eye and said, "You've changed, Margaret. There's a fire in your eyes. I like it." I shared everything with her. The canceled dinner, Adam's cold behavior, the way he had turned his back on me. She listened intently, then took my hand and said, "Take back your name, take back your voice, and show them you exist, even without them." That night I slept deeply for the first time in months. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by the need to make them happy. I was at peace with myself. The next morning, I printed a letter, 3 clear, calm paragraphs. I slipped it into an envelope, and early the next Sunday, I placed it in their mailbox. It read, "What you did that night destroyed me, but it's not the first time. For years I believed your distance was temporary, that your ingratitude was just a misunderstanding. Nothing. But Strangely, the silence didn't hurt as much. It felt logical. It felt like I had finally taken control of my life and I no longer depended on their approval or validation. Then, one day, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, is this Mrs. Margaret Lawson?" a voice asked. "Yes, this is she," I replied cautiously. "I'm calling from the Social Services Department in Villeneuve-d'Ascq. It's regarding your son, Adam Lawson." My heart stopped. "Has something happened to him? Is he okay?" The voice reassured me. "No, he's not injured, but he's on an extended work leave and we've been informed of a potential eviction risk related to his home." I had to sit down. My mind raced. "What do you mean? I don't understand." The voice softened. "We understand you are his mother. We don't have all the details, but there is an ongoing legal procedure. He has not been able to pay his mortgage, and it seems he may lose the house." I hung up, my throat dry, trying to process what I had just heard. Adam, my son, the one who had treated me like no one, was now facing financial ruin. I thought back to the money I had given them, the $15,000 I'd provided for their down payment. Had he used the house as collateral for a risky loan? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. He hadn't told me about any of this. Days passed, and I asked myself if I should step in. Should I offer help? But each time I thought about that dinner, about his cold voice and the way he shut the door on me, something inside me closed off. I couldn't be his savior anymore. Not this time. Then, out of the blue, I received a message, a simple text with no name or signature. "I'm sorry." A shiver ran down my spine. I knew instantly it was from Adam. The words were simple, too simple, but real. The next day, Sarah called. It had been nearly a year since she had called me on her own. "Hello, Margaret," she said softly. "I just wanted to let you know that Adam's really struggling right now. He's not sleeping, he's not talking to anyone, he's shutting himself off. Please, if you could just talk to him even once." Her voice was fragile, broken, and for the first time in a long time, I heard vulnerability in her words. It wasn't a manipulation or a polite excuse, it was a real plea for help. I thought about it for days. I went for a walk in the Citadel Park, where I often went when my thoughts were too heavy. As I watched the ducks gliding on the water, a memory surfaced. Adam. A few days after Sarah's call, I made the decision to visit Adam. But this time, I wouldn't be the mother who waited quietly for her son to notice her. I wouldn't be the one who sacrificed everything for the sake of family, only to be cast aside. No, this time I was going as a woman who knew her worth, a woman who had had enough of being treated as invisible. I chose a Wednesday afternoon to go. Not a Sunday family gathering, not a holiday, just a regular day. I wasn't going to play the role of the desperate mother. This time, I was walking in as someone who would finally face the reality of my relationship with Adam. I arrived at his house, my heart heavy but my resolve stronger than ever. When Adam opened the door, I was shocked at how much he had changed. He looked older, worn down. His eyes were red and tired, his shoulders slumped, as if the weight of the world had settled on him. He stood frozen for a moment, clearly surprised to see me. "Mum, you came," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I stepped inside, silent for a moment, then took off my coat. The house was still and quiet. No sounds of children running around, no laughter. It felt cold, as if the life that had once filled it was gone. The space was empty. just like the relationship between us had become. Adam sat down across from me, unable to speak at first. I took a deep breath and broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me, Adam, about the house, the debts, everything?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. He lowered his gaze. For a moment he said nothing. Then, suddenly, he broke down. I hadn't expected this, the tears, the sobs, the overwhelming weight of his grief. He cried like a child, his head buried in his hands, unable to control the flood of emotions. I sat there, still, letting him cry. For once, I didn't rush to comfort him. I didn't wrap him in the arms that had always been there for him. This time, I let him face the consequences of his actions. This time, I wasn't the one who would save him. After what felt like an eternity, he finally calmed down enough to speak. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mum. I didn't want to lose you. It's Sarah. She said you were too much, that you were always there, always interfering." He paused, the words heavy on his tongue. "I didn't want to lose my family. I didn't know what to do." I listened quietly, my heart aching for the little boy I once knew. But there was something more, something deep within me that refused to let him off the hook so easily. His actions had consequences, and I needed him to understand that. "So, you chose to lose your mother instead?" I asked, my voice calm but piercing.
Adam shook his head, tears streaming down his face.
"I was wrong. I see that now. Too late. I've betrayed you, and I can never take that back."
I didn't speak for a moment. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled with the weight of everything unsaid. Then I looked at him and said, "You know what's worse than being a burden? It's feeling useless. It's feeling replaceable. It's knowing that the one person you thought would always be there for you has been pushed aside like an afterthought. What you did to me, Adam, it wasn't just hurtful. It was like dying while still standing." He was silent, the full weight of my words sinking in. "I've given everything to you," I continued. "Everything I had. My love, my time, my money, my sacrifices. And you treated me like I didn't matter." For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to feel the full depth of the pain he had caused me. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I had already cried enough for him, and now I was done. I had to stand up for myself, and I had to make him see that I wouldn't just accept this kind of treatment anymore. After a long silence, Adam spoke again. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't realize. I didn't know how bad I was hurting you. I was selfish. I didn't want to admit it. But I've been wrong." I looked at him, my heart torn between the love I had for him and the realization that I couldn't keep allowing myself to be treated this way. "It's too late for apologies, Adam. You've chosen your path, and I have to choose mine. But this isn't about revenge. This is about taking back what's mine. My dignity, my peace, my life. You don't get to decide when I matter." I stood up, ready to leave. Adam followed me to the door. "Mom, I'm sorry. Please. I'm sorry for everything." I turned to face him one last time, my voice calm but resolute. "I'm not here for apologies, Adam. I'm here because I've realized that I don't need your approval anymore. I've lived my life for you long enough. Now I live for me. And if you ever want a place in my life again, you'll have to earn it." He stood there, looking at me, and I walked out the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was simply reclaiming my life. As I walked away from Adam's house, a strange calm settled over me. It was as though the weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. not because of what I had just said, but because I had finally stopped waiting for Adam to come around. I had made the decision to live for myself, and that, in itself, felt like a victory.
I spent more time with my neighbors, particularly with Lucille, a widow in her late 70s who had always been a comforting presence in my life. We began to have tea every Wednesday afternoon, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes just the comforting silence of each other's company. She had always admired my strength, but now she saw a different side of me. "You've changed, Margaret," she would say with a knowing smile. "There's a fire in your eyes. I like it." It was Lucille who encouraged me to take up a hobby I had long forgotten, writing. One day, while we were sitting in the garden, she handed me a book of poems. "You should write again, Margaret," she urged. "Your thoughts, your feelings, they matter." I hadn't written anything in years. Life had gotten so busy, and I had convinced myself that writing was something for younger people, something for the dreamers, not for someone like me. But that evening I dusted off an old journal I had kept, one I hadn't opened in decades. I sat by the window, the evening light casting long shadows across the room, and for the first time in years I wrote. The words flowed easily, as if they had been waiting for me to pick up the pen again. In the following weeks I wrote more often. I wrote about my life, my memories, the experiences that had shaped me. I didn't write to impress anyone. I wrote for me, to process my emotions, to understand the choices I had made, to find closure. And as I wrote, something in me shifted. I realized that I didn't need anyone's approval to be happy. I didn't need to be acknowledged by my son, or by anyone for that matter, to know that my life had value. I had spent so many years defined by my role as a mother, but now I was defining myself by who I truly was. Margaret, a woman who had lived, who had loved, and who still had so much to offer the world. A few weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Adam. I recognized his handwriting immediately. My heart skipped a beat as I held the envelope in my hands. It was the first communication from him since our confrontation. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect, but I knew I had to read it. I opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the letter. It read, "I don't know how to begin this, or even if you'll read this, but I need you to know that I've been thinking a lot about everything. I've thought about how I treated you, about how I turned my back on you when you needed me the most. I can't apologize enough for the hurt I caused you. I can't undo the pain, but I can try to make things right. I understand now what you meant when you said that you didn't need our approval to live. I see that now. And I want to tell you how sorry I am for not seeing it sooner. You've always been there for me, and I've taken that for granted. I know I can't expect you to forgive me right away, and I understand that. But I want you to know that I'm here. And I'll be here if you ever want to talk. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope one day I can earn a place back in your life. With all my love, Adam. The letter sat in my hands for a long time. I hadn't expected it, but I wasn't surprised. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a desperate plea for my forgiveness. It was simply an acknowledgement that he had been wrong and that he was ready to face the consequences of his actions. I read the letter several times, each time with a different feeling. Part of me wanted to call him, to open my heart again, to invite him back into my life. But another part of me knew that the healing process was far from over. I wasn't ready to let go of the boundaries I had set. I wasn't ready to forget what had happened. I placed the letter on my desk and sat back in my chair, reflecting. I had spent so many years chasing after the approval of others, my children, my family, society. But now I had learned to let go of that need. I had learned to live.
I continued to write, to reflect, to live fully for the first time in a long while. My days were filled with small joys, tea with Lucille, walks in the park, and the quiet comfort of my own company. I didn't expect anything from Adam anymore. I had made my peace with the reality that our relationship might never be the same. I was no longer the mother who had given everything only to be cast aside. I was Margaret, a woman who had taken back her life. But then, one Saturday afternoon, I received a phone call. I recognized the number. It was Adam's. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" I said, my voice steady. "Mom, it's Adam," he said, his voice quieter than I had remembered. "I know it's been a long time, and I don't know if you're ready for this, but I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for me, for the love, for the sacrifices. I'm sorry for everything I put you through." I let the words sink in. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It was simple, heartfelt, and long overdue. And for some reason, it didn't hurt anymore. In fact, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. "I appreciate that, Adam," I said after a long pause. "I really do. But you know, this isn't just about apologies. It's about understanding. It's about me living for myself and no longer waiting for someone to acknowledge that I matter. I don't need your apology to know that I've made the right choice for my life." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could feel him processing my words, trying to understand the depth of what I was saying. And then finally, he spoke again. "I get it. I've been selfish, but I see now that I don't have to be the center of your life. You have your own life to live. I know I can't fix the past, but I hope that one day we can start again."
Not as mother and son, but as two people who have lived and learned. I smiled softly, feeling a quiet strength rise within me. Adam had finally understood. Not just the apology, but the true meaning behind my decision. That I had taken control of my own life. That I wasn't just waiting to be seen, but living for myself. It wasn't about holding on to old wounds or rehashing past mistakes. It was about creating a future on my own terms.
I hope so, Adam, I said, my voice full of calm assurance. And if that day comes, we'll take it slow. There's no rush. We have time. We both sat in that silence for a moment, a silent agreement hanging between us. Not to force anything, but to let time do its work. There was no pressure, no expectations. We had both been on our own journeys, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to walk that path together again one day. After a long pause, Adam finally spoke again. I'll be here, Mom, when you're ready. No pressure, I promise. I took a deep breath and nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thank you, Adam. I'm glad to hear that. Take care of yourself. I will. You too, Mom, he said softly. I hung up the phone, feeling strangely at peace. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't holding my breath for apologies or gestures of love. I had already healed, and the relationship we had now, whatever it might be, was no longer dependent on my own need for validation. Instead, it was about respect, about understanding, and, most importantly, it was about two people who had once been family, learning to exist in their own space, free from the need for approval, but full of the potential for a new kind of connection. Over the following weeks, I continued to focus on myself. I started taking classes at the local library, learning about things I had always been curious about. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class and discovered a creative side I hadn't explored in years. I found joy in the little things, the smell of fresh rain, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the quiet moments spent with myself. Then, one evening, as I sat at my desk working on a piece of writing, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I felt a small knot form in my stomach. When I opened the door, there stood Adam, holding a bouquet of flowers. I stared at him for a moment, unsure of what to say. We stood there for a moment, neither of us saying anything more. It wasn't a grand reunion. It wasn't an emotional outpouring. It was just two people standing in the space between them, acknowledging the distance, but also acknowledging the possibility of something new. As Adam turned to leave, he looked back at me. I'll be around, Mom, whenever you're ready. I nodded, knowing that I didn't have to be ready. I had already taken the steps I needed to take. I had already moved forward. And as I closed the door behind him, I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I was living. It had been a few weeks since Adam's visit, and life continued its quiet flow. The flowers he had left were still sitting on the table, their bright colors a reminder of the soft shift in our relationship. There was no rush, no tension. I hadn't heard from him again, and I hadn't reached out either. We were in a space where both of us were content to let things unfold naturally. The evenings were mine, and I began to cherish the stillness that filled the rooms of my home. I found peace in the absence of noise, the absence of expectations. It wasn't loneliness, not at all. It was freedom. I could be alone without feeling abandoned. I could walk through my days without wondering when or if anyone would notice me. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the clouds shift in the sky, I thought about how far I had come.
I had spent so many years giving everything I had to my children, to my family, and to a life that often felt like it wasn't mine. But now I was living for myself, and in that I had found a quiet joy that I had never known before. I no longer needed to prove myself. I no longer had to fight for a place in someone else's life. I had carved out my own space, one that was just for me, and I was content. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned soft with pink and orange hues, I got a text from Adam. It was simple, short, and to the point. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation. I just wanted to say again that I'm here whenever you're ready. Take care. I read it a few times, letting the words settle in. It wasn't an emotional outpouring or a plea. It was just a quiet acknowledgement. And for the first time, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I had let go of all of that a long time ago. What was left was just the truth of a son who had made mistakes but was now standing on the edge of growth. For a moment, I thought about replying, but then I decided to leave it. I didn't need to respond right away. I didn't need to rush anything. Adam knew where I stood, and in some strange, unspoken way, I knew he understood that the road to healing for both of us was long, and that was okay. I went to bed that night with a deep sense of contentment. The next morning, I woke up early, as I often did, to the sound of birds chirping outside my window. The world outside was still, calm, and full of promise. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to smile. I had lived through a lot, and I had come out on the other side stronger. My life, which had once been dictated by the needs of others, was now mine to shape as I saw fit. And while I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing. I was no longer waiting for anyone to give me permission to live. I had already chosen to live for myself. As the weeks passed, I found myself embracing new experiences. I spent more time gardening, something I had always enjoyed but never had time for. I began volunteering at a local shelter for elderly women, where I met others who, like me, had been overlooked and undervalued. Their stories were different, but the pain of feeling invisible was the same. I shared my journey with them, and in turn, they shared their strength with me. Through these women, I realized that I wasn't alone in this world. We had all faced struggles, but we had also learned to rise above them. It wasn't about the past or the mistakes others had made. It was about the strength we had within. No expectations, just a conversation. I paused, feeling the weight of his words. For a moment, I thought about it. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I was ready. I wasn't sure if I needed to see him right now. But I also knew that I wasn't the same person who had been so desperately waiting for his attention. I had grown. I had changed. I'd like that, Adam, I said finally, my voice steady. But let's take it slow. No pressure. We'll see where it goes. I understand, he replied, sounding relieved. Thank you, Mom. I'll call you to set it up. I ended the call, feeling a quiet sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't sure where this new chapter would lead, but I knew that whatever happened, I would be okay. I had learned to stand on my own, and nothing, not even the past, could take that away from me. A few days later, Adam and I met for lunch at a quiet little cafe downtown. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but it was meaningful. We spoke casually at first, not diving into anything too deep. It was just a conversation between a mother and her son, without the weight of past hurts hanging over us. We talked about life, about what had changed for both of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As we finished our meal, Adam looked at me, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. "I'm really proud of you, Mom," he said softly. "I don't think I ever told you that, but I am." I smiled gently, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Thank you, Adam. I'm proud of you too. I think we both made it through." We walked out of the cafe together, side by side, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were walking on the same path. It wasn't an easy road, but it was ours. As we parted ways, I felt something shift inside me. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer walking it alone. And that, I realized, was enough. As the weeks passed after that lunch with Adam, life settled into a new rhythm. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but there was a subtle, quiet peace that came with it. We continued to meet occasionally, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just a phone call here and there. The old wounds weren't completely healed, but they weren't the focal point of our interactions anymore. Instead, we shared small moments of understanding and quiet companionship, as if we were learning how. No expectations, just a conversation. I paused, feeling the weight of his words. For a moment, I thought about it. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I was ready. I wasn't sure if I needed to see him right now. But I also knew that I wasn't the same person who had been so desperately waiting for his attention. I had grown. I had changed. "I'd like that, Adam," I said finally, my voice steady. "But let's take it slow. No pressure. We'll see where it goes." "I understand," he replied, sounding relieved. "Thank you, Mom. I'll call you to set it up." I ended the call, feeling a quiet sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't sure where this new chapter would lead, but I knew that whatever happened, I would be okay. I had learned to stand on my own, and nothing, not even the past, could take that away from me. A few days later, Adam and I met for lunch at a quiet little cafe downtown. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but it was meaningful. We spoke casually at first, not diving into anything too deep. It was just a conversation between a mother and her son, without the weight of past hurts hanging over us. We talked about life, about what had changed for both of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As we finished our meal, Adam looked at me, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. "I'm really proud of you, Mom," he said softly. "I don't think I ever told you that, but I am." I smiled gently, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Thank you, Adam. I'm proud of you too. I think we both made it through."
We walked out of the cafe together, side by side. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were walking on the same path. It wasn't an easy road, but it was ours. As we parted ways, I felt something shift inside me. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer walking it alone. And that, I realized, was enough. As the weeks passed after that lunch with Adam, life settled into a new rhythm. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but there was a subtle, quiet peace that came with it. We continued to meet occasionally, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just a phone call here and there. The old wounds weren't completely healed, but they weren't the focal point of our interactions anymore. Instead, we shared small moments of understanding and quiet companionship, as if we were learning how.
We laughed, we shared stories, and for that evening it felt like things were as they should be, not perfect, but real. After dinner, Adam and I found ourselves alone in the living room. He looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and something else, a sense of peace. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "I just want you to know how much I appreciate you, for everything you've done, for the way you've been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. I know I've hurt you, and I'll never be able to undo that. But I'm trying. I'm really trying to be better." I looked at him, the weight of our past between us, but not overwhelming me anymore. "I know, Adam," I replied, my voice gentle but firm. "You don't need to undo anything. What matters now is that we're here together and that we're both trying. That's enough." And for the first time, I truly believed it. Over the following months, Adam and I continued to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't a perfect, smooth process. There were moments of tension, moments when the past resurfaced, but there was something different about this time. We both understood the importance of space, of boundaries, and of healing at our own pace. And as for me, I kept living for myself. I continued my writing, my work with the elderly women at the shelter, and my personal journey of growth. I no longer needed to seek validation from anyone. I was proud of the woman I had become, a woman who had found peace, who had healed, and who was finally living a life that was truly hers. It wasn't the life I had once imagined, but it was the life I had chosen, a life filled with quiet strength, dignity, and, most importantly, freedom.